Admiral Vexnar stood on the observation deck of the Federation flagship Eternal Light, his four eyes watching the tactical display with growing concern. The Chronax battle fleet was moving faster than intelligence had predicted. 47 warships, each one bristling with plasma cannons and shield-piercing torpedoes, were cutting through the Nevelese sector like a blade through soft flesh. "Admiral, we have 17 hours before they reach the colony worlds," said Commander Threll, her blue scales catching the dim light of the command center. "Our fleet is outnumbered 3-1. Standard battle doctrine suggests we fall back to the Varus defense line." Vexnar's mandibles clicked together in frustration. Standard doctrine. It was always standard doctrine, and standard doctrine had cost them 6 systems in the past 2 years. The Chronax did not follow standard doctrine. They adapted. They pressed advantages. They won. "What is the status of the human vessel?" Vexnar asked. Threll checked her data pad, her tail twitching with something that might have been discomfort. "The UES Defiance is holding position at coordinates 73 Mark 5. Captain Sarah Chen has not responded to our withdrawal orders." She refused. She stated that her orders from Earth Command supersede local authority in matters of combat engagement. She is requesting permission to join the main fleet formation. Vexnar had heard stories about the humans. The Federation had encountered them only 8 years ago, a young species that had barely mastered interstellar travel. They had been welcomed into the Federation as junior members, expected to observe and learn from the older, wiser species. Instead, they had proven themselves to be something unexpected. The Battle of Thresh Prime had been the first sign. A human frigate, caught alone against 3 Chronax raiders, had done something no Federation captain would consider. Rather than flee or surrender, the human commander had accelerated directly toward the enemy, using the debris field of a destroyed cargo ship as cover. When the Chronax closed in for what they thought would be an easy kill, the frigate had released its entire load of nuclear-tipped torpedoes at point-blank range. The frigate had been damaged beyond repair, but all 3 Chronax ships had been destroyed. The human crew had survived in escape pods, rescued 12 hours later by a passing trade ship. "Bring Captain Chen on the main screen," Vexnar ordered. The display flickered, and then the face of a human female appeared. She was young by Federation standards, perhaps 40 years old, with dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes the color of wet earth. There was something in those eyes that Vexnar had seen before in predator species, a kind of calm intensity that spoke of ancient hunting instincts. "Admiral Vexnar," Chen said, her voice clear through the translation matrix. "I appreciate the communication. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about us out here." "Captain Chen, I have ordered a tactical withdrawal. The Defiance should join the retreat to the Varus defense line." Chen's lips curved in what humans called a smile. It was a strange expression, one that showed teeth. Among the Velen people, showing teeth was a threat display. But Vexnar had learned that for humans, it could mean many things. "Admiral, with respect, I've been studying the Chronax fleet movements for the past 6 hours. I've also reviewed the records of every engagement between Federation and Chronax forces over the past decade. And I believe I know how to defeat them." Threll made a sound of disbelief. "Captain, the Federation has been fighting the Chronax for longer than your species has had space travel. Our tactical computers have analyzed every possible engagement scenario. There is no victory condition against a force this size." Chen's smile did not waver. "Your tactical computers are designed to find the optimal solution based on standard combat parameters. They calculate acceptable loss ratios, resource expenditure, and strategic value. They're very good at what they do." "Then you understand our position," Threll said. "I understand that your computers are wrong." Vexnar leaned forward, his interest captured. "Explain." "The Chronax command structure is hierarchical. Their fleet commander, whoever they are, maintains direct control over all tactical decisions. Ship captains have very little individual authority. This makes them coordinated and disciplined. These are advantages, Captain, not weaknesses. They're advantages right up until the moment they become weaknesses. If the fleet commander is removed from the equation, their entire structure falls apart. Each ship captain will default to pre-programmed tactical responses, but they won't adapt to changing conditions. They can't. They've been trained not to make independent decisions. Threll shook her head. Targeting the command ship has been attempted 17 times in recorded history. It has never succeeded. The Chronax protect their command vessel with multiple layers of defense. They protect it from direct assault, Chen agreed. Nobody's ever tried what I'm proposing. Vexnar studied the human's face. There was no fear there, no hesitation, only the absolute certainty of a mind that had already calculated the odds and found them acceptable. What are you proposing, Captain Chen? Let me show you. The tactical display changed, showing the Chronax fleet formation. Chen's voice continued as she manipulated the holographic image. The Chronax always advance in this pattern. Command ship at the center, heavy cruisers in a defensive ring, attack wings on the flanks. It's the same formation they've used in every major engagement. They don't deviate because they don't need to. It's worked for them for decades. We are aware of their formations, Threll said impatiently. But you're not aware of this. Chen highlighted a point in the formation. There's a gap. It's small, and it only opens for about 30 seconds during their standard maneuver sequence. When their attack wings begin their flanking motion, the cruiser screen has to adjust position. For half a minute, there's a corridor directly to the command ship. That corridor is only 3 kilometers wide, Vexnar observed, and it would require a ship to pass within range of at least 8 Chronax cruisers. Correct. No Federation vessel could survive that approach. No Federation vessel, Chen agreed. But the Defiance isn't a Federation vessel. We're built different. We think different. She paused. We're willing to die different. The silence stretched. Vexnar felt something stir in his chest, something that might have been hope or might have been fear. These humans were either brilliant or insane, perhaps both. Even if you reached the command ship, your weapons could not penetrate their shields, Threll pointed out. I know, that's why I'm not planning to use our weapons. Vexnar's mandibles clicked together. Captain Chen, what exactly are you planning? Chen's smile widened. Admiral, have you ever heard of something called a kamikaze? The war room of the Eternal Light had not seen this many officers since the Battle of Varus 7. Representatives from 6 Federation species stood or sat or floated around the central tactical display, their attention fixed on the human woman who stood at its center. Captain Sarah Chen was not tall by human standards, but she carried herself with a kind of authority that made her seem larger. Her uniform was different from Federation standard, the dark blue fabric marked with symbols that represented her vessel's history. Vexnar had learned that humans placed great importance on such symbols. The term kamikaze comes from Earth's history, Chen was explaining. During a global conflict in the 20th century, warriors from one nation would deliberately crash their aircraft into enemy ships. The word means divine wind. It was considered the highest form of sacrifice. You are proposing to destroy your own ship, said Director Mellies of the Vorton Collective, his voice carrying the harmonic resonance of his species. This is suicide. No, Chen said firmly. This is not suicide. Suicide is dying without purpose. What I'm proposing is sacrifice with very specific purpose. We aim to remove the Chronax command ship from the battle. My crew understands the risks. They volunteered for this mission. All of them? Thrill asked. Every single one. We held a vote. It was unanimous. Vexnar watched the faces around the room. He saw confusion, disbelief, and something else. Something that looked almost like admiration. "Captain Chen," he said, "I cannot authorize a Federation vessel to engage in a one-way assault. The ethical implications alone—" "The Defiance is not a Federation vessel," Chen interrupted. "We operate under Earth Command Authority. I'm not asking for your authorization, Admiral. I'm asking for your cooperation." "What kind of cooperation?" "I need your fleet to engage the Chronax in standard formation. Draw their attention. Make them focus on you. When the attack wings begin their flanking maneuver, create as much chaos as possible. The more distracted they are, the better my chances of reaching the corridor." "Your chances are minimal regardless," Director Mellies observed. "The probability of surviving long enough to reach the command ship is less than 12% according to our calculations." "Your calculations factor in Federation ship capabilities and Federation tactical responses. They don't factor in what the Defiance can do." Chen activated another display, showing a schematic of her vessel. "Earth ships are built for close combat. We don't have the long-range weapons you favor because, frankly, we can't afford them. What we have is heavy armor, reinforced structural integrity, and engines that can burn at 140% capacity for short periods." "That would destroy the engines." "Yes. It would also increase our acceleration by nearly 60% for approximately 90 seconds, enough to punch through their defensive screen before they can adjust their firing solutions." Threll stepped forward, studying the human ship's design. "Your engineering is crude, effective perhaps, but crude. There are no redundant systems, no emergency backups." "We build our ships to fight," Chen said simply. "Everything else is secondary." The discussion continued for another hour. Chen answered every question with the same calm certainty, providing data, calculations, and tactical projections. Slowly, Vexnar watched the mood in the room shift. These officers had spent years fighting the Chronax with conventional tactics, watching colonies fall, watching good ships die in battles they were never meant to win. Chen was offering them something different, something that went against every principle of logical warfare, and yet, as crazy as it sounded, it might actually work. "There is another option," Chen said as the debate wound down. "I can attach the Defiance to your main fleet. We can retreat to the Varus line together. We can follow standard doctrine and watch the Chronax take 5 more colony worlds." She let the words hang in the air. "The people on those worlds have names," she continued. "Families, dreams. They're counting on us to protect them. I've read the casualty projections. 2 million deaths if the Chronax fleet isn't stopped here. 2 million people who will never see another sunrise because we were too afraid to take a risk." Vexnar felt the weight of command pressing down on him. He thought of his own family, safe on the core worlds. He thought of the colonists in the Nevelese sector, who had traveled across the stars to build new lives only to find themselves in the path of war. "Admiral," Threll said quietly, "standard doctrine." "Standard doctrine has failed us," Vexnar replied. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each officer. "I am authorizing full fleet engagement. We will follow Captain Chen's tactical plan." The murmur that ran through the room was part shock, part relief. For years, these officers had followed rules written by committees, approved by councils, designed to minimize risk. Now they were going to try something different. "Captain Chen," Vexnar said, "you have 12 hours to prepare your crew. When the engagement begins, you will have one chance. Do not waste it." Chen saluted, a human gesture of respect. "Admiral, the Chronax believe they cannot be beaten. They've never faced an enemy willing to die to prove them wrong. That ends today." She turned and left the war room, her footsteps steady and sure. Vexnar watched her go, wondering if he had just made the greatest tactical decision of his career or the biggest mistake. The UES Defiance was smaller than most Federation warships, a compact vessel designed for speed and aggression rather than endurance. Its hull was scarred from previous battles, the metal patched and welded and patched again. To Federation eyes, it looked like a relic, A ship that should have been retired years ago. To its crew, it was home. Captain Sarah Chen walked through the corridors, stopping to speak with crew members as she passed. She knew every face, every name, every story. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, who had joined the fleet to escape a dying mining colony. Ensign Yuki Tanaka, whose parents had been killed in the first Chronax raid on human space. Chief Engineer Kofi Mensah, who had designed half the modifications that kept the Defiance running. These were her people, and in 12 hours she would lead them into battle. "Captain on the bridge," someone called as she entered the command center. "As you were." The bridge was cramped by Federation standards, with stations arranged in a tight circle around the central command chair. Viewscreens showed the stars outside, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Chronax fleet was moving closer. "Status report," Chen said, settling into her chair. "All systems operational," reported Commander James Park, her executive officer. He was a thin man with prematurely gray hair, a veteran of 3 major engagements. "Engineering reports the engine modifications are complete. We can hit 140 for exactly 93 seconds before total failure." "That should be enough." "Weapons are primed. We've loaded every torpedo we have. If we're going out loud." Chen smiled. Park had been with her since her first command, a broken-down patrol ship that nobody wanted. He had believed in her then. He believed in her now. "The crew?" she asked. "Ready, scared, but ready. I've heard a few of them recording messages for family back home." "Make sure those messages get transmitted before we engage. Everyone deserves to say goodbye." Park nodded, his face troubled. "Captain, are you sure about this? We could still pull back, wait for reinforcements." "There are no reinforcements, James. Earth sent what ships they could spare. The Federation won't commit more vessels to what they see as a losing fight. It's us or nobody." "It feels wrong, throwing our lives away." "We're not throwing them away. We're spending them on something that matters." Chen leaned forward, her voice dropping to a pitch meant only for him. "Those colony worlds have children on them, kids who haven't seen Earth except in pictures. If the Chronax take this sector, those kids don't grow up. They become statistics in some report that bureaucrats read over coffee." Park was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened his shoulders and nodded. 93 seconds, he said. "That's a long time. Long enough to make history." The next few hours passed in preparation. Systems were checked and rechecked. Crew members ate their meals in small groups, speaking quietly. Some prayed. Some laughed, telling old jokes that weren't funny but felt right. Some just sat in silence, watching the stars. Chen used the time to review her tactical plans one final time. She had spent months studying the Chronax, learning their patterns, their habits, their blind spots. They were not stupid. They were not careless. But they were predictable in ways they did not understand. The Chronax believed in hierarchy. They believed that command should flow from top to bottom, that decisions should be made by designated leaders and followed without question. It was an efficient system. It had served them well for centuries. But it had a flaw. Remove the head, and the body would twitch helplessly until new leadership could be established. That process took time. Time that the Federation fleet could use to destroy the confused and disorganized enemy. It was a simple plan. Simple plans were good. They left less room for things to go wrong. 3 hours before engagement, Chen gathered her senior officers in the mess hall. They stood around a single table, cups of coffee cooling in their hands. "I'm not going to give a speech," she said. "You all know what we're doing and why. I just want you to know that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life." Chief Engineer Mensah raised his cup. "To the Defiance." "To the Defiance," the others echoed. Chen drank her coffee, bitter and strong. It tasted like every cup she'd ever had in her career, from her first day at the academy to this moment. Somehow that felt right. "One more thing," she said as the officers prepared to return to their posts. "If any of you want to transfer to the Federation fleet before we engage, now is the time. No judgment, no dishonor, just speak up." The silence stretched for 10 heartbeats. Then Lieutenant Webb laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Captain, where would be the fun in that?" The others joined in, their tension breaking in a wave of laughter that had more than a little edge of madness to it. Jen felt something warm in her chest, pride perhaps, or love, or both. "All right then, back to your posts, we've got a war to win." 1 hour before engagement, Admiral Vexnar contacted the Defiance. "Captain Chen, my fleet is in position. We are ready to begin the assault." "Thank you, Admiral. One thing before we start." "Yes." "When this is over, I want you to remember something. Humans aren't braver than other species. We're not smarter or stronger. What we are is stubborn. We don't accept that something is impossible just because everyone says it is." "I will remember, Captain." "Also, if this works, I want you to recommend to the Federation Council that they start integrating human officers into your fleet command structure. We have ideas, perspectives you haven't considered. This doesn't have to be the last time someone tries something crazy." Vexnar's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned to recognize as amusement. "You are negotiating terms while flying toward your own death." "Best time to negotiate. You're feeling grateful, and I won't be around to collect on false promises." "Very well, Captain. If your plan succeeds, I will personally advocate for human integration into the Fleet Command Academy." "That's all I ask." The communication ended. Chen sat alone on her bridge watching the stars. In 30 minutes, everything would change. The battle began with fire. The Federation fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, 16 warships arranged in the classic defensive pattern that had served them for generations. Admiral Vexnar watched from the bridge of the Eternal Light as his tactical officers began coordinating the attack. "Kronak's fleet is responding," Commander Threll reported. "They're adjusting their formation. Attack wings are moving to flanking positions." Expected timing: 7 minutes until they begin their primary maneuver. Vexnar kept his eyes on the display. Somewhere in the chaos of the formation, a single human ship was waiting. The Defiance had positioned itself behind the Federation line, hidden from Kronak's sensors by the larger vessels. Chen had explained that this was essential. If the Kronaks spotted the human ship too early, they would recognize the threat and close the gap she intended to exploit. "All ships begin primary engagement," Vexnar ordered. Plasma fire erupted across the void. Federation weapons reached out toward the Kronak's fleet, met by answering fire that turned the darkness into a storm of light. Ships on both sides took damage. Shields flared and failed. Hull breaches opened to the cold. "Enemy attack wings are moving," Threll shouted over the noise. "They're beginning the flanking maneuver. Signal all ships to focus fire on the right wing. Create chaos, not victory." The Federation captains, briefed on the plan, followed orders they would never have accepted under normal circumstances. They were not trying to win this battle through conventional means. They were trying to create confusion, to draw attention, to make the Kronaks believe that this was just another failed assault. "Gap is forming," Threll announced, 3 kilometers wide directly to the command ship. Vexnar opened a channel. "Captain Chen, the corridor is open." "I see it, Admiral. We're moving." On the tactical display, a single blue dot began to accelerate toward the heart of the Kronaks formation. It was a tiny thing against the scale of the battle, easily overlooked in the chaos of combat. The Defiance screamed forward, its engines burning far beyond their rated capacity. Inside the ship, the temperature climbed rapidly as heat management systems struggled to cope. Crew members gripped their stations, feeling the vibration of a vessel pushed past its limits. 20 seconds to corridor entry, Commander Park announced, his voice steady despite the sweat running down his face. Chronex cruisers are beginning to notice us. Point defense is engaged, reported the weapons officer, taking fire from multiple sources. The ship shuddered as plasma bolts struck its hull. Armor plates vaporized, exposing the structure beneath. Warning alarms screamed from every station. Armor at 60%, 50%, we're losing sections on the port side. Chen's hands gripped the arms of her command chair. Maintain course, all power to forward shields and engines. The Defiance plunged into the corridor. For 30 seconds, the ship flew through a tunnel of fire. Chronex cruisers poured weapons into the narrow space, filling it with destruction. The human vessel's shields failed in the first 10 seconds. Its armor began to melt away. Systems exploded, killing crew members at their stations. Engine power at 143%. Mensa's voice came over the intercom, strained with effort. We're tearing ourselves apart, but we're still moving. 20 seconds to command ship. A massive impact threw Chen from her chair. She felt something crack in her chest but pulled herself back up, ignoring the pain. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, obscuring her vision. Status. We've lost half our crew, Park shouted. Hull integrity at 20%, we're barely holding together. Through the viewscreen, Chen could see the Chronex command ship growing larger. It was enormous, a fortress in space, bristling with weapons that were now turning to face the incoming threat. Too late. All hands brace for impact. It's been an honor. The Defiance struck the command ship's hull at maximum velocity. The explosion was visible across the sector. A sphere of fire expanded from the point of impact, consuming both vessels in nuclear fire. The command ship's shields, designed to resist conventional weapons, could not withstand the concentrated kinetic energy of a ship that had accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed. When the fire cleared, the command ship was gone. Admiral Vexnar watched in stunned silence as the Chronex fleet fell apart. Without central command, their attack wings veered off course. Their cruisers began firing at each other in confusion. Ship captains who had never been trained to think independently made decision after conflicting decision. All ships advance, Vexnar ordered, his voice cracking with emotion. Press the attack. The Federation fleet surged forward, exploiting the chaos that the Defiance had created. Within an hour, the Chronex armada was in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of 23 destroyed vessels. The Battle of Nevelis was over, and everything had changed. 3 months later, Admiral Vexnar stood before the Federation Council, the highest governing body of the Interstellar Alliance. Representatives from 42 species watched from their seats, arranged in a vast amphitheater that had seen 1,000 debates over 1,000 years. The results speak for themselves, Vexnar said, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the chamber. Since the Battle of Nevelis, we have incorporated human officers into 7 fleet commands. In every case, combat effectiveness has improved by a factor of 30% or more. At what cost? Demanded Councillor Vreth of the Mineral Collective. Human tactics are reckless. They accept casualty rates that we would consider unacceptable. They accept calculated risks, Vexnar corrected. There is a difference. The humans do not throw away lives carelessly. They spend them on objectives that matter. That willingness to sacrifice has given us victories we never thought possible. He activated a holographic display, showing a series of battle records. The engagement at Thresh 4. 3 human officers aboard a Federation cruiser suggested using the planet's magnetic field to mask an approach vector. It was unconventional. It was dangerous. It resulted in the destruction of a Chronex supply depot that had resisted attack for 6 years. Another image appeared. The defense of Voron Station. Commander Rachel Torres, human tactical officer, predicted a Cronax infiltration attempt based on what she called pattern recognition. She could not explain her reasoning in logical terms, but she was correct. Her warning saved 4,000 lives. These are anomalies, Counselor Vreth insisted. Individual successes do not justify systemic integration. Then let me speak to systemic results. Vexnar called up a new set of data. In the 3 months since we began integrating human officers, overall fleet casualties have decreased by 17%. Enemy casualties have increased by 41%. Territorial losses have stopped entirely. For the first time in a decade, we are not losing this war. The chamber was quiet. Vexnar could feel the weight of their attention, the slow turning of minds that had been set in their ways for centuries. I knew Captain Sarah Chen, he continued, his voice softening. She commanded the UES Defiance, the ship that destroyed the Cronax command vessel at Neveles. Before she died, she asked me to advocate for human integration. She believed that her species had something to offer the Federation. Not just courage, though they have that in abundance, but a way of thinking that complements our own. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We are old species. We have developed our tactics over millennia, refined them, perfected them, and in that perfection we have become predictable. The Cronax know how we fight because we always fight the same way. We follow doctrine. We calculate optimal solutions. We make the logical choice. These are virtues, Counselor Vreth said. They are virtues that have become limitations. The humans do not think like we do. They trust their instincts. They improvise. They take risks that our computers tell us are unwise, and sometimes they are right when the computers are wrong. Admiral Vexnar looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of counselors from species who had been traveling among the stars before humans had discovered fire. I am not asking you to replace our officers with humans. I am asking you to learn from them, to add their perspectives to our own, to become stronger together than we are apart. The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made, countered, refined. Old prejudices clashed with new evidence. Fear of change wrestled with fear of defeat. In the end, the vote was close, but it passed. The Federation Fleet Academy would open its doors to human instructors. Human officers would be assigned to command positions throughout the fleet. A new era of cooperation would begin. Admiral Vexnar returned to his ship that evening, exhausted but satisfied. As he walked through the corridors of the Eternal Light, he noticed something different. The crew members he passed, officers from a dozen species, walked with a new energy. There was hope in their eyes that had been absent for years. In his quarters, he found a message waiting. It was from Earth, from the family of Captain Sarah Chen. They had heard about his advocacy before the council and wanted to thank him. Attached to the message was a photograph. It showed Chen as a young woman standing on a green hillside under a blue sky. She was smiling, her dark hair blowing in the wind. Behind her, a vast ocean stretched to the horizon. Vexnar studied the image for a long time. He did not fully understand what drove humans to risk everything for causes beyond themselves. Perhaps he never would, but he had learned to respect it. The photograph went on his wall, next to the other reminders of those who had given their lives in service. The war continued. There would be more battles, more losses, more sacrifices. But now the Federation had something it had lacked before, the ability to surprise its enemies. And in war, surprise was often the difference between victory and defeat. 1 year later, Commander James Park stood on the bridge of the Federation flagship Eternal Unity, the newest vessel in the fleet and the first to be designed with human input from the beginning. Its corridors were wider than previous designs, its systems more intuitive, its crew a blend of 12 species working in harmony. Park had never expected to wear a Federation uniform. After the Defiance, he had planned to retire, to find some quiet colony world and drink himself to death in peace. But the Admiral had other ideas. The Federation needs officers who understand what Captain Chen understood, Vexnar had told him. Officers who can teach our people to think differently. Will you help me build that future? Park had said yes. And now here he was, serving as tactical officer on the most advanced warship ever built, helping to train a new generation of commanders who would carry Chen's legacy forward. "Commander, incoming transmission from the outer patrol," reported the communications officer, a young Velen whose scales shimmered with excitement. On screen, the image showed a Federation patrol ship, one of the new rapid response vessels that had been added to the fleet in the past year. Its captain was human, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, one of the survivors of the Defiance. "Commander Park, we've engaged a Kronax raiding party attempting to enter the Nevele sector. 3 enemy vessels destroyed, no casualties on our side." Park felt a familiar surge of pride. Tanaka had been barely out of academy when she joined the Defiance. Now she commanded her own ship, protecting the same colony worlds that Chen had died to save. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Continue patrol and report any further contacts." "Understood, Commander." Tanaka out. The screen went dark. Park turned back to the tactical display, watching the movement of Federation ships across the sector. There were hundreds of them now, a fleet larger and more capable than anything that had existed a year ago. And scattered among them on bridges and in command centers and in the classrooms of the Fleet Academy were humans, teaching, learning, fighting, changing everything. Admiral Vexnar entered the bridge, his footsteps quiet on the deck. He had aged visibly since Nevele's, his carapace showing the stressed lines of command, but his eyes were bright with purpose. "Commander Park, status report." "All quiet, Admiral. The Kronax seem to be pulling back across the entire front. Intelligence suggests they're regrouping." "Let them regroup. When they return, we will be ready." Vexnar moved to stand beside Park, looking out at the stars. "I received word from the Council this morning. They have approved the creation of a new tactical doctrine incorporating human methodologies. It will be taught at every level of fleet training." Captain Chen would have approved. She would have said it was about time. Vexnar made the clicking sound that passed for laughter among his species. "Humans have a saying, I believe, something about teaching old dogs new tricks." "It's generally considered impossible," Park said with a smile. "Then I suppose we are doing the impossible." Vexnar looked at the tactical officer for a long moment. "You will be promoted to captain next month. The Council wants you to command the new training squadron." Park felt his heart skip. "Admiral, I'm honored, but I'm not sure I'm ready." Captain Chen was not sure she was ready to sacrifice her ship and crew to save 2 million lives. She did it anyway. That is what you taught us. Not certainty, but commitment. Not perfection, but purpose. Park thought of Chen, of the last time he had seen her, of the calm certainty in her eyes as she ordered the final approach. She had been afraid. He knew that now, but she had done what needed to be done. That was the human way. Fear and action, uncertainty and commitment, holding both truths at once and moving forward anyway. "I accept," he said. The war was not over. Perhaps it never would be. But for the first time in a generation, the Federation was fighting on its own terms, with tactics the enemy could not predict and strategies they could not counter. And somewhere, watching from whatever lay beyond the stars, Captain Sarah Chen was smiling.